Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel where we do all things artsy fartsy. In today's episode, I'll be showing you how to do a complementary color painting. So if that interests you, then stick around. And don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. Also want to remind you that last week I did launch my very first shop online through my website. So if you want to check that out, I'll link that down below. Now, with that said, let's get painting. Okay, so let's go over all our supplies. I've got a 10 by 8 wood board here and some colors. I've decided we're going to do orange and blue. So I'm actually going to be mixing my orange together because this cad orange is too bright and I want something a little richer. And we've got our palette knife and some brushes and the blue, black, white, and we are ready to rock and roll. Okay, so I'm just gonna come in with some black towards the top here and fade that down into blue and then maybe into some orange for a sunset. So with a complementary color painting, you're mainly gonna be using just two colors. For this painting, I've chosen blue, so the other color is gonna be orange. And then I do have white and black in here so that I can change the tone and shade of my orange and blues. So you can use white, black, and your two colors. So if you guys still don't understand what a complementary color is, it's very simple. It's just basically the opposite color of a color on a color wheel. So if you were to take a color wheel and look at red, for example, across from that on the other side of that wheel is a shade of green. That's all it is. Pretty easy. So I used that black a little at the top and then I faded that into the blue. So I have a really, really deep blue that fades to a light blue. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and mix up my orange now. Remember how I said that cad orange was too bright? So we need to change this into a richer, deeper orange color because if you add white into cad or black into cad, it just won't look right. I think it's more complex if we make our own. I suggest that you always, when possible, try to mix your own colors. Don't use them straight from the tube. So I've added just a touch of red oxide. Red oxide is a very strong color, so you don't need much when you use it. And already you could see that it's really making this orange into a beautiful, almost of a burnt brick color. And I think this is going to be just perfect in this painting. So there are empty paint tubes that you can buy so that you can store your mixed colors that you made and use them for a later date. So I will see if I can find one of those and link it down below for you. Okay guys, I know, I'm putting yellow down. You're not supposed to do that with a complementary color because the opposite of yellow is purple. So this wouldn't be considered a complementary color painting if you were to just leave the yellow there. But I am putting the yellow down and then putting my orange I just made over it because I want the yellow to brighten that orange in the area. You could also achieve this by obviously mixing that orange on your palette with the yellow instead. I was just being a little lazy and I put it down. So in order for this to be a complementary color painting, I need to make sure that I hide most of this yellow because we only want the orange and blue to show. So I'm coming in now and sprinkling in some stars with white and some light orange. So for those of you who have never sprinkled or splattered paint before with this technique, it's really easy. The only paintbrush in my hand that has paint is the one on the right, and I'm tapping it against the one on my left. That's it. Okay, so now I want to come in with some of that burnt orange color. I've added a little bit of black into it to make it even deeper. And I'm going to make some clouds throughout the sky here very loosely with my brush, doing little small circular motions. And now I'm going to brighten the bottom of the clouds with some of that same orange, which I've brightened with some white and a touch of yellow. I feel like it needs a little bit more contrast, so I'm going to try to brighten it up a little bit more. So you want to be careful about adding too much white or yellow into that orange because you can end up straying from your complementary color, which it appears I may have added too much and done that myself. But here you go. That's what it looks like when you do it. So now we're going to take our palette knife with the blue, pure blue, and we are going to drop in a shape of the mountains right in front of that sunset. I'm probably going to end up covering up most of that sunset, which is fine because I'm going to be adding orange in throughout the rest of the painting. And now we want to add a little bit of lighter blue to the mountains to give it a little bit of contrast here and create the illusion of shadows and peaks and add more detail into that painting. But because the sun is behind the mountain, we can't really add any bright highlights to this side of the mountain. So this side of the mountain is going to be a little bit more subtle than normal. I'm going to be taking some pure titanium white and just touching spots here and there off in the distance to give the illusion that the mountain back there has more sun hitting it. But we want to be very careful with this because, like I said, the sun is behind the mountain, so the front of the mountain really doesn't get these bright highlights. You can add a touch of orange to that white if you want to give the mountain the illusion of it glowing from the sun. I think that would be really, really pretty. I'm going to come in here with just a touch brighter blue to add some very, very soft, subtle highlights on the side of the mountain to give it more detail and a little more contrast. Again, not real bright highlights though. Those are on the other side of the mountain. And we're going to come in here with some light blue and drop a little hillside down in front of the mountain to push that mountain back. And we're going to be tapping in some shapes to resemble some trees way up in the distance. It doesn't have to be perfect because this is so far back there. We're going to be painting more on top of it. So we really just want to fill this color in and get an illusion of trees off in the distance. Okay, now I'm going to come in with my fan brush and using some phthalo blue. I'm going to be tapping in some areas where I want my trees to go. And I think I want this to be a river. So I want the trees to be coming from the distance in the left and getting closer to us in the foreground towards the right. So I'm going to tap in the general areas of where I want the trees, and then I'll be rotating my fan brush to give some more details to those trees. Remember that the farther away something is, the smaller and less detailed it is. So as these trees get closer to us, we need to make sure they're a little larger and darker and they have more details to them. And now I'm just going to come in with that darker blue and push it out a little ways and start creating the shape of my river here. And now I'm going to repeat that process on the left side here with those trees in the dark phthalo blue. Remember to make sure your trees are not all straight up and down, so I'm going through and just making some a little bit more crooked there. Okay, so I think it's time to add some orange back into the painting. I'll be putting orange into the river to help break up all of this blue that we just put down. Also, it'll look like the sunset is bouncing off of the river, so I think that'll give it a really pretty illusion of light reflection here. And now I'm going to come in with that darker burnt brick orange, and just using my brush, I'm swiping it back and forth across that river, give it some more depth to that water and make it look not so flat. And now it's time to add some highlights. This is mostly yellow, but I'm tapping it in and then swiping. That way I am brightening the orange. So you won't really be able to tell that there's a yellow here. It'll just be a brighter orangey area. And now it's time to come in on the left side and put some ground over here. I took my fan brush with my phthalo blue and I'm just swiping in some hills, and then I'm going to start patting my fan brush against the board to give it a little bit more texture, and so we can create the illusion of some little bumpy ground, some little hills and things. And we are also going to be putting in some flowers over here as well. So we want to make sure that we get all these variations of values down first before we put those flowers in. Now that we got this ground in, it's really making that river look pretty intense, almost more like lava flow. So I think I want to come back in with the blue on this fan brush and actually swipe that across the river to break up that orange a little bit and make it look a little bit more natural. So I'm very lightly just grazing the top of the surface with my fan brush, as you can see here. It doesn't take much, so be very gentle when you do this, because we do still want to leave a lot of that orange in there. We just want to break it up a little. Orange and blue are absolutely my favorite complementary color pairing. What is yours? I'm just wondering, does anybody out there prefer the green and red or the yellow and purple? Let me know. And now I'm going to come in with a little bit of white on the edge of my palette knife and just very lightly graze and swipe in some white to create the illusion of a water line. And you can also do this throughout the river to give it sort of a ripple effect. I think the water line in the back is a little too heavy, so I'm going to come in with a wet brush and just sort of brush that water line out a little bit to blur it a bit, just so it's not so harsh. And now I'm going to take that palette knife again with a little bit of white and create a little bit of friction in the water here, some ripples, and just to make it look like the river is moving. Now, another fun painting idea that you could do, which I might do later on in the future, is a double complementary color painting. So that is where you would take, let's say, the blue and orange and also do purple and yellow. So the colors are very intentional. They are both complementary, but they're also next to each other on the color wheel. So the purple is next to the blue and the yellow is next to the orange. So I'll probably show you guys how to do one of those in the future since they're so neat. And now I'm coming back in with my palette knife and a little bit of white, and I'm just adding a few more ripples and maybe some rapids here in the water just to give it some more details. Now I took my liner brush, which I've loaded with some light phthalo blue, and I'm just dropping in some stems and little details here and there on our hill. Okay, so now I'm coming in with my brush loaded with some of that burnt orange, and I'm just going to gently tap in some flowers. The ones up closer obviously are going to be much larger and more detailed, and the ones way off in the distance, I'm just going to swipe in the color right here. I'm going to brighten these up a little bit with some pure cad orange as well to really make them pop against that blue. I think we should just go crazy with these flowers. I love California golden poppies. They're one of my favorite flowers. So let's just make this a totally poppy-filled hillside here in our painting. And I want to make sure that I bring those poppies all the way down off of the painting here to really fill up the space. And like always, guys, I'm going to make sure that I link all of the materials I used today in this video down below in the description so you can check that out and get everything that you need to create a painting just like this one. So looking throughout my painting, I think I want to work on the water line closest to the flowers. I think that's not defined very well. So let's go back in with some white and make that more of a defining water line. There, I think that looks a little bit better. Now I just want to brush out a little bit of the edge to blend it, make it look almost like there's some sort of a beach area down there. And now I'm just going to go into the water again with my liner brush loaded with that darker burnt orange color and just add a few deeper details to increase the contrast just a little here and there. Okay, and I think one of the last steps we're going to do today is actually sprinkle in a little bit of white into that water to give it some of a glistening effect and make it look like the water's really kind of moving along, some splashes here and there. So I put paper towel down to protect the rest of my painting because I don't want the splatters in the trees or anything. And now I'm taking my brush, loaded it with some white, and I'm just going to splatter that right over the river area. So I'll give you guys a little bit of a close-up here. Hopefully you can see that okay. And I just wanted to show you what that looks like when you splatter. Okay, so here we are, the finished piece. And I'll zoom in here so you can see all of that detail in this little tiny 8x10 acrylic painting. The little splatters and all those little brush strokes and everything. This was super easy and a lot of fun, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and I'll see you next week.